For my week 3 assignment, I would like to use I would like to practice using Screencastify to go over notes with my students. As I go into the 2020 school year, I don't know if I'll be doing as much in-face teaching because of COVID-19. And that's the reason I want to practice using Screencastify to go over guided notes with my students. And to start off, I did notice how the mentor supported their new teacher's development. The first thing I noticed was their meeting times. They set a meeting time for every Thursday. Those meetings could last from 10 to 15 minutes, but they were not set in stone. Any teacher will admit that yes, we have our meetings and yes, we try to follow our strict schedules, but reality is that we need to be flexible. I'm very blessed at my school where I'm in my third year or fourth year of teaching at this school, and I'm allowed to have a coach. Most teachers after their first year don't get a coach at my school, but because I'm friends with the coach, we have an unofficial mentor mentee relationship. We at first set a meeting for every Wednesday during period 2. Very quickly, we realized that every Wednesday during period 2 wouldn't work with our hectic schedule. And that's why, like what I saw in the video, sometimes they met before school, after school, they met with a time that works. And it's meant to help support the new teacher, and it's all about being flexible with the new teacher. I also noticed that they helped focus on some of the positive aspects of the teacher's lesson. When I was student teaching, I had a teacher who was my mentor who would focus only on the negatives of my lesson. She would tell me what I did wrong and what I needed to change, but she never told me exactly what I was doing right. And that led me to constantly changing my lessons and not figuring out the things that worked in a long term fashion. Now, I've seen with teachers that if you have too much positivity, you don't actually get critiqued on what was wrong. And I didn't see that there. I saw she focused on true positives, like what she mentioned with the whiteboards. By focusing on positives and being honest with things that need to change, they started to build that trust, which led to later respect. I could see that the mentee had a lot of respect and trust of their mentor. One of the other ways I think that they supported the teacher was the mentor looked at everything with the mentee from the start of the lesson to the end. And one of the things that she noticed was at the end of the lesson, the mentee didn't figure out how she was going to close out the lesson before the break. And this leads me to mentors are counselors. And I'm going to talk about this later, but a mentee who's a new teacher might not realize all the aspects of concluding a lesson, especially right before a break. They might need some counseling there with when you have an end of a lesson and a break, you need to figure out how you're going to pick back up where you left off. And that made they made plans for their future lesson on how they're going to get students reconnected. I remember my first year teaching right before the winter vacation that I did not fully plan for how I was going to pick my students back after the break. I assumed that they would all remember everything that I had taught them before the break. And now that I'm a veteran teacher, I wish I would have had a mentor that would have pointed out how much students lose over a break, even if it's only for 2 weeks. I also noticed how responsive they were to each other. She knew her mentee. They had a personal relationship that definitely was beyond the classroom. They might not have been best friends, but you could definitely tell that they have no problem laughing and joking together. That being said, she knew her mentee and she knew that she did not have a clear goal with her lesson. This is a problem that I also struggle with because I'll have great ideas and I'll have a huge lesson, but I won't have the end in sight. I also did some side research and I found that goal setting is a major struggle for both mentors and mentees. Another thing that I saw was that she was open to learning new ways. This means that they were comfortable with each other. In order to be vulnerable and be willing to learn a new style of teaching, you need to trust those that you're working with. Also, by learning new ways, the mentee is learning things about the school and how the school has run in the past and things that will work in the future. And with the relationship, I saw that nothing was forced. Not once did the mentor say, "You have to do this." It was mainly suggestions. And having an organic relationship is key. And having an organic relationship with a mentor and a mentee is one of the struggles because it's very difficult to form that organic relationship. One of the ways that I noticed that they did this was they had a very open dialogue. They were very critical of each other in a professional way. Now, they weren't insulting, they were challenging each other. They were asking, why would this work? What should have been done? How could you have done this? And anytime that you see somebody admitting that they're nervous, it means that they're comfortable. It means that they're responding to each other and that they're willing to support each other. I saw a lot of different ways that they were willing to work with each other. The first was they were flexible. They were flexible with their meeting times. I've worked with colleagues, and I'm guilty of this too, where I get set into a schedule. That ability to say, hey, I can't meet Thursday at 2, can we meet Monday at 3? That's powerful because we all have our schedules. We're all very busy, especially in the public school system, and that flexibility is key. I also liked how they mentioned at the start of the school year they had an induction where they compared and contrasted their lessons and they set the groundwork for their future relationship. This led to her knowing her mentee. This knowledge of who she was and what works and what doesn't allowed them to have a good relationship where they could be critical of each other, but not offend each other. I've learned in the public school system it's very easy to offend somebody when you don't have a good relationship. And this led to the mentor being able to see all possible outcomes with their lesson. She's clearly a veteran teacher at the school. She knows what to look for with her mentee. And I liked how she was guiding the lesson with things with key phrases like, I noticed, or have you thought about this? It wasn't her telling her, hey, you need to do this, or you forgot this. It was, hey, I noticed. I noticed that you didn't have this, which guides the mentee to make her own assumptions about her lesson to fix it herself. She also made it so that it was all about the mentee, not her. She asked the mentee, what does she want to focus on? How does she want to better her lessons? And that led the control to be on the mentee. It wasn't on the mentor. The mentor was there as a guide and a counselor. She was there providing suggestions, feedback. Now, I'm not in her classroom every day. I saw a quick little video of this. So I don't fully know the full details of how this impacted student learning. But I do know that when you start off with a goal of the lesson and make it student centered, you will have positive student achievement. I've multiple times found myself at the middle of a lesson going, wait, what was my actual goal? Why am I doing this? So by starting off their mentor mentee session with the end in sight, it is going to have a positive impact of student learning. You can get that clear groundwork and create a clear roadmap to student success. She also did the mentee had trouble or the mentor knew that the mentee was assuming that their students knew everything. This is every new teacher's big pitfall. I know for myself that I assumed one time when I was teaching a lesson about the Holocaust in the 11th grade that all of my students would have had some background knowledge. After doing some side research when my lesson failed, I learned that 33% of the world at the time of that lesson did not even acknowledge the Holocaust existed. So I learned after that moment that you can never assume your students will know something. It's actually better to assume that your students might have forgotten it and do a quick little review. I also liked how at the beginning, their mentor mentee, the mentor realized that the lesson was very loose. There was no clear goal. But by the end of their session, they had a clear, concrete goal of how their lesson would progress. And anytime you ask for a second opinion about how you can differentiate your lesson, that's going to have positive impact on student achievement. I've seen myself that most of my lessons fail because I either assumed my students knew something or I didn't differentiate well enough. I've never had a student truly not want to do something. Whenever they don't want to do something, it's usually because it's not their level and I didn't scaffold it properly. Now, there were some aspects of this that I would have recommended changing. The first is I would recommend all mentor mentees should start off or have a cup of tea, cup of hot chocolate, or a cup of coffee. I learned this when I was teaching as a Peace Corps volunteer in Ukraine. In Ukraine, whenever you have a meeting, you always start off with a cup of coffee, cup of tea, or a cup of hot chocolate. By having a hot beverage, it's more relaxed, it's more calming. It's I want you to sit down with me and we're not going to rush through this. You have to sip and enjoy it. That made it so that I was more relaxed. And I realized that when you're more relaxed, things are more open. So I felt like it was a very formal meeting. And as and for my personal style is I think it can't be formal. It needs to be very informal and relaxed. Now, at one point in the mentor mentioned that she felt that she should not have emailed the notes to her mentee about the lesson before the post conference. I disagree with this. I thought that was a great idea. First, the mentee expected to get these notes. And the second, while it is an informal relationship, while they're not doing actual evaluations because that's the role of the administrator, I do feel that anytime you have somebody else in your classroom, it does make you nervous and you do want that instant feedback. And I know whenever I have somebody in my classroom, the first thing I do is check my email afterwards to see if I got any notes. I'm not thinking I'm going to get fired, but I do want to know what was good, what was bad. And that helps me sleep at night because nothing's worse than going into a meeting thinking that you might have done something completely wrong. And the final part is something that is, I believe, beyond everybody's control with a mentor mentee. And this would be a more systemic problem or district problem. With, I think we should start these apprenticeships earlier. The mentor mentee relationship should start as soon as a person enters college. I did not actually get to meet my student teacher mentor when I was in college until my fourth year of university. Now, we all don't know who we're going to be, what schools we're going to go to. So this is a dream. But I would love for freshmen in college to be put into classrooms where they can start understanding a mentor mentee relationship so that that groundwork can be started at the beginning of college. That way, when they graduate college, instead of being told, hey, here's your mentor, they might be looking for a mentor, start wanting that so that they can hit the ground running. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. Here are my references, and please let me know if you have any additional questions.